Welcome to Nature Craft Box. I'm Stephanie Matthews, and today we have Brittlebush. Now the Brittlebush is it's also called incensio. It's a very fragrant bush, and back when the Spanish first came to the West, the monks actually used it as their incense for their churches. And they used what was inside of these sticks right here. There's a resin in here. And they would use the resin in their churches instead of frankincense. And so you can see there's the shining, shimmering resin inside, and they would gather this and use it in their churches. And so this can also be a frankincense alternative for you as a incense, but more importantly, we're going to actually make a tincture out of it today. And so the Brittlebush tincture is for rhinitis, which is for allergy symptoms. And what a beautiful plant to have here in the spring while all of these wildflowers and all the palo verde and all the mesquite and all the pollen is flying around here in the desert. This is a perfect remedy to have on hand for when spring has sprung, to have Brittlebush on hand. So we are going to make a tincture today out of the flowers and the leaves. So it's really important when making a tincture to find out which parts of the plant to use. Some tinctures just call for the leaves, some for the whole plant, some just for the roots or the flowers. So with this one, I am going to simply take these 3 fingers and I'm going to pull the heads off of the plant. And I actually just have a sifter here, and that way any little things that need to fall through can. And I simply just pull the flower heads off and place them on here. And I'm actually going to let these flower heads dry for 2 to 3 days before putting them in the menstruum that I'm going to use, which is going to be a Everclear vodka. So the menstruum is just the solvent that is used to extract the plant. And so I'm just simply plucking these leaves off. And some plants you can just simply pull all the leaves off. This one I want to pluck because, again, when I'm making a tincture, I want to use the best parts of the plant. I don't want to use any leaves that are dried or have holes. I really want to use the really fresh green leaves to make my tincture. That way I'm getting the most amount of nutrients and the most amount of goodness that is coming from this plant. So the rest of this I'll simply leave at the bush for it to compost. And then we can gather another. So before I gather any plants, I always ask. It's just as simple. I'm just asking the plant if I can have the one right before I break it off. This comes from a lot of indigenous cultures, and it's how I learned to harvest sustainably. And so with this bush, I'm not going to go through and pick all the leaves and the flowers off of one bush. There's many Brittlebush plants around here, so what I will do is I will harvest probably 3 to 4 branches from this bush, leaving ample here for the birds, the butterflies, and the bees, and then I'll go to another bush. So again, I'm just plucking the nicest leaves off. Any leaves that have any yellow or are wilting, I'll just put under the plant so it can compost there. And again, just slide. And so I've got a little collection going, and I'm going to continue gathering probably 2 to 3 more branches from this plant, and then I'll show you how to go forward with the tincture. For my menstruum, I am going to be using Everclear, and this Everclear is a 151 proof. So this is 75% alcohol and 25% distilled water. So because of that, these plants are filled with a lot of water themselves, so I want to make sure that they're dried out for just a day or 2 before I use them, so that I'm not adding more water to my tincture, diluting it even more. So if you have an 80 proof vodka, which is 50% alcohol and 50% water, which is available in most states, then it's really important to let your herbs or your plants dry out, preferably even longer so that there's no water content in them to dilute your tinctures even further. So just to demonstrate though, I'm going to gather up what I have so far, and to make the tincture, I'm simply just going to gather this up and place it directly into the jar that I have. You want to use a jar that has a tight sealing lid to it. So a mason jar that comes with a nice sealable lid is preferable. You simply take the flowers and the leaves, and you want to fill the jar all the way to the very bottom ring. And when you're finished filling the jar, you want to put the solvent or the menstruum, in my case the Everclear vodka, and you want to cover the plants completely with the alcohol. And so that's going to be so that any of the slightest little flowers or leaves are sticking out. You want to cover it completely with the alcohol. And then you'll simply screw the lid back on, and you're going to keep this in a warm place. So when the tincture is complete, then you put it in a cool, dry place. But to make the tincture, you want to put this in a warm, nicely, you could even put it in a windowsill, a warm, sunny place to let it infuse the most amount. So when a tincture is being made, warm, sunny place for 4 to 6 weeks. A great way to keep track of what tinctures you have is to just on a piece of paper write down what plant is in there, what type of alcohol, the proof that it is, and the date. And that way you have a really clear way of identifying and making all of your tinctures, and you don't get confused about how long they have or how long they've been there. And that way you have a really nice herbal tincture making system. After 4 to 6 weeks, when your tincture is ready, you're going to strain out all of the plant. You can compost this, and then you can refill the liquid. So you'll put the liquid from this jar into another jar by straining it in with a cheesecloth, and you'll take that liquid, fill it back up to where it was. So I like to use the same jars that I used to make it. So I have an exact same jar of this empty that I will strain this into, and then I will fill it up the remaining way with the same solvent that I use. So I will just add more Everclear vodka to this once it's been strained. And then from there, you can put it in little dropper bottles for your use. And that is how you would make a Brittlebush tincture. And Brittlebush is great for all allergy symptoms. And this plant can't be used raw for allergy symptoms, but it can be an amazing source to have as a tincture. One of the items that will be sent out to our patrons this month is a Brittlebush tincture for their allergy symptoms. If you're interested in looking further into how to receive the goodies that we make here at Nature Craft Box delivered to your doorstep, please visit our Patreon page. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and follow if this is something that encourages you and that you are finding useful.